Star Wars, The Clone Wars is canceled. But thankfully we know what was supposed to happen. Well, we don't know what was supposed to happen. We have a general idea of what stories were planned. Anyway, I'm going to have a link in the bottom description of here in case you're all curious. But Star Wars Celebration was today, and Dave Filoni got together and basically just showed like sketches, concept art, unfinished animation of all the Clone Wars stories that he never got to tell. Because the way Clone Wars production works, they were always very far ahead of the actual show airing in terms of episodes they had written and sketches and concept art, to a point where they actually had everything written when the show, by the time the show was canceled. But unfortunately, because it was canceled, they didn't get to show everything. So again, links down in the description if you want like to see like the blog showing like what everything Filoni talked about. But here I'm just gonna go and overview it because like there are a lot of fans who are bummed that the show is canceled, myself included, and want to. And this video is to let you know there were more stories planned, and here's what was planned. And I somehow doubt that AMC Jedi Council will talk about this. I mean, they might, but I just want to, and especially given that I'm a big fan of this show. Like, for as much as nice as AMC Council is, like, those guys are more like prequel. They're more classic Star Wars fans, and understandably. I mean, a lot of that just has to do with the fact that they grew up with the original trilogy, whereas I grew up with the prequels. Like, I had this phase where I liked the prequels, and then I saw the Plinkett reviews, and a combination of that and getting older, I started to realize they had their problems, but I do have this sort of nostalgia and attachment to the prequels that they don't have, which, again, probably explains to some extent why some people like John Campea don't like the show, but yeah, so I like it. So as a Clone Wars fan, I just wanted to share with all you guys what stories they were planned in case you didn't hear about the conference or whatnot. And I'm titling this Season 7 just so it can get more views. Not as a viewer, but if someone's just generally curious, like they'll stumble upon this. So without further ado, let's get into this. So real quick, I just want to talk about the two stories that we do have. But the two stories that were released that we do have. The first one, and again, I'm going to do these in the order they were presented just because I'm pretty sure this was the intended order. So, Season 6, there were two arcs we didn't get that were unfinished, uncompleted. One of which is an arc that would have continued Darth Maul's story, and I'm not going to go into detail about that because it's already out. It's called The Son of Dathomir. It's this 4-part comic series. Pick it up. It's great. It's really good. It'll make you bum the show is canceled. It continues Darth Maul's story and brings closure to certain aspects of it. The next arc, which I feel like would have been the Season 6 finale, which I vlogged about along with the Darth Maul arc, is this arc set on Utapau. It's Anakin and Obi-Wan on this really fun adventure. It shows the friendship between them in ways that we didn't see in the prequels, but we see in the show. And it's fun, it's entertaining. It wasn't finished, but they did have like some of the animation finished, like a rough cut. And not only did they have a rough cut, but they actually had all the voice work done, so they are able to release it online. Go into StarWars.com under Clone Wars Legacy, and you'll find it. It's really good and really fun. And now we're going to get into the episodes of the show that we just now learned about. The first, which involves the unaired, unproduced Seasons 7 and 8. And boy, were we in for a treat had this been finished, because the stuff that they had planned was amazing. So Season 7 would have opened with Bad Batch, and it's this arc where Rex would have been in charge of an unorthodox and experimental group of clones called Bad Batch. And again, I'm not going to go into too much detail about it since Dave Filoni's already talked about it a bit. But basically, it would have seen the return of Echo, the clone who died in Season 3. And another reason why I don't need to go into much detail about it is because they are screening a rough cut of it at Celebration. So if you're lucky enough to be there, you will get to see a rough cut. So hopefully they'll release it online. Afterwards, I really hope it sounds amazing. And the reason why I know it's the first arc is because the writer of it, Brent Friedman, who's very friendly and responsive to fans on Twitter, tweeted that but in a podcast, he mentioned his favorite thing he wrote was going to be the opener of season 7. And when I tweeted asking him what it was, he confirmed this was the arc, which is finally getting released. And well, I wouldn't say much on it, but I do have a bit of information on it that Brent was nice enough to share, because I asked him, the quotes that appear at the beginning of every Clone Wars episode? Well, I just asked him out of curiosity what they were, and he was nice enough to give them to me, along with 2 of the episode titles. He didn't want to give the other 2 to me because they kind of spoil the episode. So the first episode of the arc is called Bad Batch, and the quote is, "The best defense is a strong offense." The second episode would have been called The Distant Echo, and the quote is, "Wars are not won with superior weapons, but with superior strategy." The third episode's quote is, "In war there is no such thing as neutrality," and the fourth episode is, "Learn from the past, but live for the future." And then the next arc would have continued Bad Batch's story, and the reason why is because Bad Batch, it was written for Season 6, but they moved it to Season 7, just because they thought it worked better there. And it basically would have continued Bad Batch's story. It would have followed them to Kashyyyk. There was going to be an arc showing Yoda's good relations with the Wookiees. It would have involved the clones fighting, these... I forget. Boss, the bounty hunter, those creatures. It would have seen the Wookiees fighting them. And there was going to be a lot of fun action. The Wookiees kind of believing the trees are sacred, kind of like in Avatar. And there was going to be this whole thing about how the clones need to chop down the trees for resources to fight the Separatists. But the Wookiees are like, no, the trees are sacred, you can't chop them down. And it sounded really cool. It was in the process of being animated, and online somewhere you can probably, don't have the exact link, but there was a snippet of it released on Instagram, which it looked pretty cool. Then the third arc was one that was, I'm guessing it was originally part of Season 6, because, when I looked at the dates on the concept art, it was, made around the same time as, the other arcs written for Season 6, specifically the Utapau arc and the Betch arc, and it's literally to a point where I feel like if the Clovis arc hadn't gotten moved from Season 5 to Season 6, this would have been part of Season 6, but they had to bump something to Season 7, so I guess this would... Basically, this episode would have been a bounty hunter-centric arc, specifically about the relationship between Cad Bane and Boba Fett. It turns out Bane knew Fett's father, Jango, and this is basically Bane sort of training Boba Fett. It would have kind of acted as a passing the torch arc, showing Fett becoming the awesome bounty hunter he is. And we would have gone to Tatooine, and this is an arc we've known about for a while. The writer, Matt Mitchevitz, or however you pronounce his name, has tweeted about. There's been sketches. There was a clip shown of it, which thankfully someone posted to YouTube. I'll have a link to that. It looks really cool. And the sad part is that this was one of the last arcs they recorded lines for. This was an arc that they were in the middle of recording dialogue for when the show was canceled. The Yoda arc was the last thing they finished, and this would have been the next thing to go into production, most likely. But unfortunately, they didn't have all the dialogue recorded, so just when they were just about to start animating this when the show was canceled. And yeah, it looks really cool. It would have been a Western set on Tatooine, kind of based off of the second movie in the Fistful of Dollars, in the Dollars trilogy, and hopefully we get to see it, because it looks great. And we've been missing Cad Bane a lot. He wasn't in Season... last time we saw him was Season 4. He wasn't in Season 5 or Season 6. So, it's cool to know that we were going to see him again, and it's a shame that we won't. Another arc they had planned was an 8-episode arc for Ventress called Dark Disciple. It's still unclear whether or not this was 2 separate arcs, one of which would be in Season 7 and one of which would be in Season 8, or if this was just one giant arc. But it would have shown Ventress and Quinlan Vaz teaming up to take down Count Dooku. And it sounds really cool, and thankfully we are getting it via novel form. I'm really looking forward to it. It looks really cool from the snippets of concept art we've seen for it. that have been shown for. And they did reveal something really cool, is that later on in the arc, there was an action scene involved where a bunch of bounty hunters were going to try and take down Count Dooku. And one of them would have been Boba Fett, who would have been in his classic armor, which is something Dave Filoni, he alluded to it in an interview. Just Google IGN Season 4 interview. Because Filoni said originally in Season 4, when we see Boba Fett, he was going to be in his armor. But they decided to hold off on that and wait for it. And the idea that every time you see Boba Fett, we're going to get a different piece of him and who he is. So, and I'm guessing the Bane and Fett arc would have dealt with that. So, this does leave the interesting question. If Dark Disciple takes place after the Fett and Bane arc, when are we getting the Fett and Bane arc? Like, are we going to be missing any important information in that? I don't know. Hopefully they can get, like, the remaining voice work done. I really want to see that. Then, Dave Filoni did confirm there was going to be an arc featuring the Mandalorians and the Separatists. My guess is that this would have continued Darth Maul's story and brought a close to it, and it probably also would have tied in, because Filoni released this sketch of Ahsoka and Bo-Katan working together, and later on, writer Brent Friedman, like, someone asked him, like, if this arc, because there's a picture of Darth Maul in robes, and there was a picture of that I just described, and someone asked, like, is this the same arc? And he said yes, so this arc that would have likely brought closure to the Mandalore conflict that we got in the end of Season 5, it would have likely wrapped up that along with continuing Ahsoka's story. And then the next arc that was mentioned was we would have returned to Mon Calamari, you know, that water world we visited in Season 4. Yeah, we would have gone there. And then Season 8, I mean, I'm going to assume that the Ventress arc, or part of it, we were going to get in Season 8. So, like, if Season 8 sounds kind of small in comparison to Season 7, again, it's probably because there was just one more arc that was going to be in there. But anyway, or maybe the Mon Calamari arc would have been here as well. But anyway, so there's this one arc that sounded really cool, and I feel like Christian Taylor would have written it because it sounded very supernatural and out there. It involved, apparently, the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. It was built on top of, like, this older Jedi/Sith temple, and the arc, we would have gone down there underground, and there was this really cool sketch released, and it sounded really sick. I'm just like, oh, why was this show canceled? The next arc would have been Rex and R2-D2 going on a adventure. This is another arc written by Brent Friedman, the guy who wrote Bad Batch, the Sunny Day in the Void arc, and he also wrote I'm trying to remember, the one in Season 4, Obi-Wan Goes Undercover. It's the one that's inspired by The Box and Face Off. But anyway, it's basically the idea is that clones in their spare time, they're like racing each other and flying around. And this arc would have been inspired by Top Gun. It would have featured Rex and R2 hanging out on this moon over Ryloth, and it would be a fun adventure. Then the next arc, which I don't get this arc, there's someone out there who does, but apparently there was this character from the comics in the EU called Yuuzhan Vong, who there would have been an arc centered around him, and again, I don't know who he is, but I'm sure the fans of him are really excited that there were plans to bring him into the show and make him canon. And yeah, like the concept art for it looks sick. Again, it's not, I don't think it's on the Clone Wars website. I could be wrong, but just look around and you'll find it. I'm sure someone's going to post it. And Filoni also talked a bit about what the series finale would have dealt with, like the actual finale to the show. And oh my gosh, I am so bummed we didn't get this. So it would have taken place during the events of Revenge of the Sith and gone past the movie, but we would have seen it from Ahsoka Tano's perspective and Rex's perspective. The creators did confirm there were more plans for Ahsoka on this show. We were going to continue her story following her leaving the Jedi Order, and they showed a quick clip, which again was posted. I wasn't there at Celebration, but I just was following it on Twitter, and people were posting images and stuff. But there was a clip. It showed Ahsoka, well, looks like the 1313 area from Coruscant, so I'm amazed she's still hanging out there. But anyway, it looks like She basically buys a used speeder bike and has a bit of an accident, and it looks really cool. And they would have updated her character model last time. And oh yeah, in the Ventress arc, Dark Disciple, Ventress would have teamed up with Ahsoka. And Filoni also hinted that Barriss was going to come back, although we'll have to wait and see. And yeah, so I'm really bummed that we didn't get to see these stories. Hopefully we do get to hear them someday. I mean, we have gotten 2 stories. We're getting another in the form of a novel. And sorry, I didn't mean to flip anyone off there. That was just coincidence. And anyone who's lucky is going to get to see the Bad Batch arc tomorrow. So hopefully this was helpful to anyone who's bummed the show was canceled and wanted to know what was going to happen, what was planned, what was going to happen. And now it's all laid out in front of us. Again, I'm going to have links to the Clone Wars thing that was held today, the Bounty Hunter, the Clone Wars thing, the sketches Filoni released online when the Lost Missions came out, and also the Boba Fett clips. So if you're curious about those, you can check them out. And leave your thoughts below on how interesting these arcs sounded. Comment below, like, dislike, and this is JStar260, and may the Force be with you.